about it, for multiple reasons.
For the December 16th school board meeting, please stand for pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Howard, can I get a roll call?
Absolutely. Mrs. Walker,
Here.
Mrs. Ginrick, Mrs. Beachy,
Here.
Mr. Claire.
He dropped off.
Mr. Bushy,
Here.
Dr. Creighton,
Here.
Mr. Gerhart,
Here.
Mr. Linder,
Here.
Mr. Sensenig.
Here.
8 members present.
Thank you. The December 16th, 2024 school board meeting is open to the public and is also being streamed virtually. An executive session was held on December 16th, 2024 to discuss personnel matters. Can I first get an approval for the agenda for the 2016 school board meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Can I get a motion for approval of the minutes of the November 18 school board meeting?
Second.
I got a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Passed. Approval of the December 2nd, 2020 school board reorganization meeting minutes.
Make a motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Passes. We're gonna do the recognition of visitors and public comment. The board encourages citizens of the district to come before the board to present their petitions, inquiries, and other communications of interest. The board invites public citizens of the district to comment on any topic within the board's jurisdiction. As outlined in Board Policy 903, the board requires public participants to be residents or taxpayers of the district. Anyone wishing to address the board during public comment will need to be in person. If you wish to speak to the board, please sign in prior to the meeting. Public participation in the meeting is the prerogative of the board president, who establishes the amount of time allowed for speaking. Out of respect for time, comments should be limited to 3 minutes. For your convenience, we'll have a timer over here. Participants are asked not to make comments that are personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Tonight, we have an auditor that is going to go first due to time. So I'm going to hand it over to him.
And then we do.
And then we'll do the public comment.
Thanks. I'll be real quick. So here's where we stand with the June 30th, 2024 audit. We're reviewing the final document. But since you're at that position now, you're kind of halfway through this year, you're working on your 25-26 budget, which is crazy as that may seem. And there needs to be decisions made regarding that budget. So we're going to get the results of the audit out. The results aren't going to change from the final audited document. So I put together just a few slides to kind of say, where you were as of June 30th, 2024, and, the results of the audit, which are all good, positive in terms of that, and, how the different funds ended up for the year ended June 30th, 2024. So that being said, there we go. So the first page I have here, so within the audit report, as everybody knows, it's a pretty lengthy document, 60, 70 pages. But everybody should focus primarily in the front of the audit report when they're about to, or the front and the back of the audit report, and everything else in between is just a bunch of noise, So at the end of the day, we want to look at pages 1 through 3, which is your independent auditor's report. There's different bullet points within the independent auditor's report. What we want to focus on is that opinion paragraph, which is right up at the top, stating that the numbers that were presented by management for the year ended June 30th, 2024 were fairly presented. What you're going to see within the audited document is that the numbers are consistent with what management have been reporting to you throughout the year, and also, as they closed out of June 30th, 2024. The only thing I like to point out within the independent auditor's report is the required supplementary information part of the independent auditor's report. I think it's important because it talks about the most important parts of the audit report, in my opinion, from somebody. If I'm going to tell anybody to look at the audit report, these are the pieces of the audit report that I'm going to have them look at if you're not an advanced user of the financial statements. So the required supplementary information, although we don't audit the required supplementary information, I think is truly important for especially the public to look at. The first piece of the required supplementary information is management's discussion and analysis. And this is just a series of 10 pages that management puts together, kind of summarizing the results of the year, basically kind of talking about, hey, here's what happened during 23-24, here's what's happened to date since our audit report, and also gives them the ability to talk about the future and the impact of what's happened in previous years and what they expect to happen in the future. Unfortunately, an audit's a historical document, so at the MD&A kind of brings everything together, the current or the past and the current. And the other piece that we're going to talk about here tonight in the required supplementary information is a budget to actual schedule. The budget to actual schedule is not considered audited because we don't audit your budget. We actually just audit your actual numbers. So that's kind of stuck in the back of the audit report. And we're going to kind of go over some summary pieces of the budget to actual schedule. But in reality, it might be one of the most important pieces of the audit because that, as a board, is the most important thing you do on an annual basis. Hey, here's what our budget, here's where we came in for the year, and here's how those results compare to each other. So that being said, here's a summary. So if you go to the back of the audit report, once you receive it, what you're going to see is a blown out or expanded version of this, kind of breaking out the revenues, the expenditures, by natural function and classification, the revenues by the local sources, the state sources, et cetera. So if you look at your revenues year over year, you're budgeted $66.8 million in revenues. Your actual revenues came in better than anticipated by about $68.1 million. And that $1.2 million variance is almost all related to local source revenues. You know what your state source revenues are going to be. You know what your federal source revenues are going to be. For the current year, there was better than anticipated investment earnings, and that's almost $1 million of that is related to investment earnings. So in the previous years, I'm sure you had acceleration of revenues related to some taxes, transfer taxes, but things have kind of shifted. Those have kind of slowed down the velocity of those revenues increasing year over year and kind of go back to more historical norms. Whereas the investment earnings, when you went to do the 23-24 budget, we anticipated that the federal funds rate number one was going to increase to what it did, and then also stay there throughout the duration of 2023-24. As you go into future budgets, you obviously have to continue to budget for these revenues conservatively because they could change at any notice and really impact your future, the results of operations if they don't go as budgeted. So you want to budget conservative and not too aggressively with those revenue amounts. Expenditures came in really, really close. I mean, so if you actually look at the expenditures, there's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs, but ultimately they almost came in budget. Just by nature, expenditures are a lot easier to budget. You know what your personnel are going to be and the costs related to those personnel, and the nature of the school district being driven by employees. You know what those costs are going to be, and they're almost 75% of the cost of the total district. So as you can see there, ultimately, some ups and downs related to all the different functions. And as you can see down here below, student transportation expenditures were more than budget, but there were other functions that were under budget, primarily regular instruction programs that kind of made up for the transportation services being more than budget. At the beginning of the year, you have budgeted to use $550,000 of fund balance. You added almost $1 million for a $1.5 million positive variance. Your fund balance was $27 million at the beginning of the year. You added $1 million to 28, and we'll kind of look over the components of what that fund balance is made up of at year end. But overall, when you look at those variances and you're looking at almost $70 million, things were really done well in terms of budgeting for 23-24. The next page here is your general fund balance and kind of the breakdown. I think I'm sure you've heard this before. PDE only allows you to have 8% of your next year's expenditure budget to be what we consider unassigned or unappropriated for future. So in the case of the school district here, in the past, you have committed fund balance for two major categories. Number one, capital projects, $10.7 million has been put aside for future capital projects. And 11.3 for future any kind of increases in debt service, or to use that money for debt service to kind of smooth out any kind of budget deficiencies that you might have in the future. And your unassigned fund balance is at $5.6 million, which represents almost 8% of your next year's expenditure budget of over $71 million. One thing I like to point out too, the capital projects commitment amount, there are rules by PDE. I think it was smart that the board kept the money within the general fund, because once you take that money and you kind of slide it over, if you look at the financial statements, you're going to see different columns. You're going to see a column for the general fund and for the capital project. So once you physically slide that money over to the capital projects fund, you can't uncommit that fund. It's kind of stuck there. There's actually like a state report that doesn't let you move the money back. So what this allows you the ability to do is to commit the funds, and then you could actually go ahead and uncommit the funds and put it into a different category, whereas if you moved it over. So as you kind of embark on some new future capital projects and you decide how you're going to fund those, you can actually, move that money over as it's needed, because you can't move it back at the end of the day once that money is moved over. Here's your capital projects funds. So within your audit report, you're going to see one fund, capital projects fund, that's made up of your capital reserve fund. Your capital reserve fund is made up of transfers directly over from the general fund. So in past years, you've had surpluses from one-time revenue streams that you've moved over for one-time future capital expenditures. Capital reserve fund, you had $2.8 million at the beginning of the year. You had some projects during the current year. There was no transfers made over. You have $2.2 million still sitting within that fund. And then you also have your capital projects fund. $19.7 million at the beginning of the year. You finished out the high school renovation project. You had some money for athletic field projects, and you have a deficit in there. And that will be funded as I know you're looking into future capital projects. And then this is where that capital projects commitment of fund balance within the general fund. So what will happen is that money will come over from the general fund, or if you issue debt, would actually eliminate that deficit. So I know there is a plan in place, but ultimately at the end of the year, June 30th, 2024, within the capital reserve and capital projects fund, you had money in the capital reserve, and that deficit within the capital projects fund will be funded once those decisions are made. I usually don't talk about this slide. Usually the food service fund and the internal service fund, or the fund that's used to capture your self-insurance claims. But in the case of the school district and a lot of my other school districts as well, we're seeing a increase in the velocity of costs related to, number one, not only related to food service and supplies and different inflationary factors associated with that. And then second, with the internal service fund related to self-insurance claims. Number one, they've just been increasing, and the costs associated with those have been also increasing. So as you can see with the food service fund, the costs of the food service fund exceeded the current year revenue by almost $500,000. And then in the terms of that internal service fund, same thing. You had a deficit in the previous year. So I was kind of talking to Brian today. I know there's going to be conversations about funding these deficits, and the only way you're going to fund these deficits, the only way this money is going to come from is the general fund. The general fund is responsible, number one, to fund the internal service fund for those self-insurance claims, but then also the food service fund. If the food service fund can't generate enough operating revenues, the general fund will have to fund that as well. And then the last slide, the most important things we want to talk about what kind of audit report you had. You had an unmodified, clean audit report. There were no findings related to internal controls over financial reporting or on non-compliance. As part of our audit, we also conduct a single audit if the school district receives in excess of $750,000, which is about to change to $1 million. We have to do what's called a single audit, even though the federal money that you receive is maybe the smallest piece of revenue. It is the smallest piece of revenue that you receive. There's a lot of compliance or federal compliance requirements. I'm just happy the ESSER money is gone and we don't have to no longer test that. So we could kind of get in a groove in terms of testing the programs we've tested in the past, primarily being the child nutrition cluster and the special education cluster. So we also test the compliance and the internal controls over your federal awards, and we had no issues. And also the business office has different filing requirements. Number one, probably the biggest one is there's a report filed with the Pennsylvania Department of Education called the Annual Financial Report. Financial statements will be posted on the AMA website to comply with the bondholders' requirements in terms of reporting financial disclosures. And then also the single audit that we just talked about the federal funding needs to be filed within 9 months of year end, and we're well within that, meeting those requirements. So we'll get all those filings done. We received excellent cooperation, and we're going to put the final audit out and but these are the numbers, and so we want to get those numbers out. If anybody has any questions, concerns, but just the one thing, I feel like I say the same thing at every school district, where we had a period of time where the revenues were, far outpacing the expenditures just because of the nature of, that period of time from 2020 to now. Now things kind of be shifting the other way. The expenditures seem to be outpacing the revenues a little bit.
Thank you very much.
If I could just, Want to thank Amy Kiefer, Director of Accounting Services, and the rest of the business and HR team. Really appreciate their work, and they have the most to do with this positive result. So thank you to that team. Amy, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for letting Carl go first. He has to rush to another meeting. But we'd like to go ahead with the board comments. I think we have, or the public comments. I think we have 5 people signed up. 4?
Ms. Geisinger, just,
Four.
yeah, read off the name and then they can come up.
Hi, my name is Kristen Kachi. My son attends Barron Elementary in the 1st and 2nd grade multi-age classroom. I have a few concerns that I would like to share as a parent. Teacher continuity in a multi-age classroom is a main reason for choosing multi-age learning. Some of the benefits includes personalized learning that works with the strengths and weaknesses of each student. It also helps to limit the amount of stress that comes from transitioning into a new grade multiple times, as opposed to, we'll say 4 as opposed to 2 if you stick with multi-age throughout the elementary career. Consistent teacher presence can contribute to better academic achievement, especially with children who have learning curves such as a disability, disorder, autism, or other special needs. There are countless studies showing the importance of consistent routines with young children and the benefit it holds in their overall emotional, mental, and even their physical health. Have the students in the multi-age 1st and 2nd grade class at Barron Elementary experienced any stability or teacher continuity over the past year and 3 months? No, they have not. Have the handful of students that have gone from kindergarten who are currently in 2nd grade experienced any teacher continuity over the past 3 years and 3 months? No, they have not. The 2nd graders currently in the multi-age classroom have had 3 teachers from the start of 1st grade to present. And like I said, a handful of these students went through similar situations in kindergarten with the teacher going on maternity leave and a long-term sub was brought in. Those students now have had 5 teachers in 2 years and 3 months. With your decision to bring on another new long-term substitute, that makes it 6 teachers that these kids will have had, with a big possibility that this new long-term substitute could be replaced at any given time. So that number could continue to grow before these children have finished 3 years of school. I speak for my son and how difficult it is to have such instability with his education currently due to being such a young child, and as well as the fact that he has an IEP and is also on the autism spectrum and has a speech apraxia disorder. I cannot begin to explain to you the amount of stress and effort it takes for him to become comfortable with a new teacher, new surroundings, etc., and to learn the way a new teacher operates. And he has gone through that process many times, as I have already stated. Not to mention the difficulties that can happen for a new teacher to learn how each individual student operates. By replacing the current teacher, you are doing a major disservice to these students. My son is finally comfortable and approaching his current teacher and asking for help. I am told he is thriving now over the past few weeks. He is forming confidence that he needs to succeed in the classroom and with his education.
You wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now that will have to change again. Are you as a board and administration putting these children's needs first? If you're not asking yourself these questions, then I personally do not believe you're the best candidate for this position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, you did it right.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia. I'm the mom of one of Miss Banana's 1st and 2nd grade multi-age class children as well. I'm here to share the impact the consistent change of teachers has had on my daughter, Mila. Has anyone heard of APD? Probably not many people. It stands for audio processing disorder. Mila was diagnosed with it at the end of 1st grade, and it's a learning disability that requires committed special treatment to help a learner succeed. Unfortunately, she hasn't begun getting help until the beginning of this year. I blame that on the constant change that we purposely did not sign up for. When she had Mrs. Castle, by the time any kind of learning problems should have been caught on to, she got a new teacher. That teacher was amazing and started catching on, but as we all know, it takes time to learn a kid, let alone an entire classroom full. And by the time she let me know something seemed off, it was the end of first grade. We knew that teacher was not returning because Mr. Pyle excelled at communicating with parents and making sure they felt involved in their child's schooling. So on to the new year, we went in with Miss Bonanno. I had to explain to her how APD works for Mila because, as with most disabilities, it is not one size fits all. Miss Bonanno was able to understand the information I gave her and has learned Mila well. Mila does not cry at school anymore, which she used to do a lot of because she was stressed out and there was too much going on for her. And she now feels confident in Miss Bonanno's ability to assist her in the way she needs without too much effort to ask. And now that you have made your decision to put the children second instead of first in this hiring process, Mila will have to learn and be learned by yet another teacher. 4 teachers in 2 years has dramatically put her behind other second graders. This does not seem like something having the child's best interests would do. I, as her mom, will now have to communicate what has worked for Mila to another teacher in hopes that they can understand and be able to accommodate to her and the other children in the short amount of time they will have left together before the end of the year. She'll then move on to 3rd grade, well behind the rest of her classmates, and have to start the process over again. I know for a fact that Mila would be further ahead if she had the consistency we signed up for when we put her in multi-age. I would urge you to reconsider Ms. Bonanno as the next multi-age teacher. We know she was not picked, but I am standing before you because so far all of those words have fallen on blank ears. Besides everything I have just said, I would like to add a word of the distrust and disconnect I now feel towards the principal for the way she handled the situation. As moms, we are overly protective and we will find things out. And her lack of communication when Mrs. Castle quit with an email to us and no formal email from administration, and her lack of communication to us about the fact that Ms. Bonanno was not continuing through the end of the year unless she was accepted for the position, has been unacceptable and has given a very disconnected, non-involved, uncaring feeling from and towards her. As moms, we are and will be as involved as possible. It would have been nice to have had some form of input on how we feel towards the current teacher before the decision was made to not hire her. My heart breaks for every child affected by this mess and every parent that cares, which is more than you think. We are here and we would like to be heard and taken seriously. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First off, thank you for taking time to listen to our concerns tonight. I truly appreciate that. My name is Jessica Atkins. I'm the parent of 2 children at Barron, a 1st grader and a 3rd grader, both of whom have spent time in this particular 1st and 2nd grade multi-age classroom, which is currently being taught by Miss Nina Bonanno. Miss Bonanno is the 2nd long-term substitute for this classroom, which had been previously taught by Mrs. Castle until maternity leave this past January. When we began this school year, we were told Ms. Bonanno would remain in place until Mrs. Castle returned from leave in January. However, 4 days ago, on Thursday of last week, parents received an email from Dr. Maroli stating that Mrs. Castle had in fact resigned and that the school now intends to replace Ms. Bonanno with another 1st-year teacher in a long-term substitute position next month, pending board approval. This decision came as a surprise to me. So I reached out to Dr. Maroli on Thursday afternoon. On Friday, she and Dr. Axe both spoke with me on the phone. I truly appreciated their time. However, I feel I did not receive clear, convincing answers, and I'm still left with a major concern about the timing and necessity of this decision. In a few minutes, board members, you will be asked to vote to approve the hiring of this replacement substitute. Therefore, I'm here tonight to implore you to do whatever is within your ability to pause this process with the interest of the current students and to compel the school to please give Ms. Bonanno the opportunity to finish the school year in this classroom. Retaining a familiar teacher that the students are bonded to will provide a much needed sense of stability and consistency, which, as you've heard, these 2nd graders especially have not had for the past year. Changing teachers mid-year is a distraction and is detrimental to children's learning. Studies show that losing a teacher mid-year is linked to a significant loss of instructional time, as well as to lower achievement in English and math. Mid-year teacher turnover is far more disruptive and consequential to student learning than turnover at the end of the school year. If a new teacher is brought in next month, these second graders will have had 4 teachers in the length of time that they were expecting to have 1. I ask this board tonight, again, please compel the school to pursue staffing changes at the least disruptive time for students, which would be at the end of the school year, not now. I ask administration to please continue to work with the current teacher to help her grow if you feel there are areas of opportunity. My personal experience with Ms. Bonanno has been nothing but positive, and my daughter loves her and is thriving. I understand parents don't get to make the staffing decisions, but I do think that everyone involved in this district, from the parents to the staff, to the administrators, to the board members, everyone has a responsibility to do what is in the best interest of these children enrolled in this classroom today. Please don't sacrifice the learning experience of our children out of the fear of missing out on a candidate who may seem like they might be a better long-term fit to the district. Please make staffing changes at the end of the school year when there is little to no impact on our children. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shelby. I'm a parent of a second grader in the 1 to 2 multi-age class in which Mrs. Bonanno teaches. I am writing to obtain some clarity and implore you to focus on providing these learners with some consistency. Our kids have been bounced around to different teachers for 2 years now. As you know, it takes time for kids and teachers to build trust and rapport, and that is important to have within a classroom to promote an optimal learning environment. It is confusing to learn that Mrs. Bonanno has been overlooked as being able to stay on as their teacher when she has been entrusted with them for months now. I would like to understand why she was qualified enough to teach our kids for the last several months, but now that a position is open and in need of a permanent teacher, she is not being given the opportunity to stay in that role. Our kids have grown to trust her, and it is not in their best interest to once again switch out their teacher. There is some legitimate reason that she should not be allowed to stay on as a permanent teacher. It seems that we as parents should be informed of that reason. Consistency is important for our kids, and it is not fair for them to switch out their teacher once again. We chose to put our children in the multi-age class so that they would have a consistent teacher for 2 years instead of switching to a new teacher each year, and they have not been given the opportunity to have that experience.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody that spoke. Someone will reach out to you. We hear what you're saying and we appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just from the district end, we acknowledge that there are things communication wise that we need to do. And we apologize for that on the back end, and we will be reaching out to families for sure.
So with that, I'll move on to personnel. And I want to get a motion from A to L.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Does anyone have any questions or comments? Steve, thank you very much. Are you back there? Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You want to just introduce yourself, Steve, give a little background?
Hi, my name is Steve Soltis. And I'm here from 1987 to 2007. Went on to teach at the college level for the last 18 years and I'll be back.
Elizabeth is here as well. Elizabeth Van Scoten is here as well.
Oh, okay, where is she?
Can you, oh,
Oh, yeah.
thank you very much. Stand up, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Van Scoten. I'm from Lidditz. I've just moved back here from Virginia and I'm really excited to join Van Central to be in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, if you guys want to leave or if you want to stay, you're welcome to. If not, you can leave. Thank you very much and good luck. Now we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bushy. Just want to say thanks to the community for all of the holiday winter concerts and all of that fun. Dr. Flannery and I have been able to serve lunches. So today we were at Barron Elementary and we told the kids we were serving Grinch burgers. So we have the middle school tomorrow and Doe Run on Thursday for Wednesday. Also, want to just thank everyone for the start of the new seasons. The new gym's going really well and people seem to be really appreciating it. That being said, I have our budget update for the base index. Mr. Howitt.
Just get it up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
First time using a laptop, sorry.
You still use a slide rule also?
Abacus, fair enough. Okay, so what we're talking about tonight is an accelerated budget opt-out resolution. And basically what that is there's two timings. When I presented the calendar, I presented you with an opt-out resolution. There's two kind of paths you can take when you prepare the budget. You can do what's called an accelerated budget. It's more complex. It's if you are seeking exceptions to the base index of 4.0 that the state set. So if we were wanting to go at 5% or 5.2 or something like that, we would have to seek an exception, and that would require us to do an accelerated budget process where by the end of January, we would have to have our first preliminary budget done. The resolution that we're doing tonight is saying we're going to forego the more complex, longer budget process, and we agree not to exceed the index of 4.0. So that's what the opt-out resolution is. A lot of people are confused by that. It took me a couple of years till I really fully understood why it's accelerated budget, but that's what it means. So at the base index, what does additional revenue with a base index of 4.0 generate? And with our current assessed value, it'd be just under $1.6 million, or just under $400,000 for every 1%. So if we were to do a 1% tax increase, that would generate almost $400,000. At the 4%, we're at 1.6. I talk about this every year. Last year we finished. Our assessed value increase was a 0.55%. It's very low, as you can see, coming down from previous years. We're still waiting for a lot of the developments to hit our tax rolls. Some of them are there, but not all of them. It's been a slow process, and part of that is because we are actually approaching a countywide reassessment, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So that is taking a lot of the county's resources and efforts right now, as it's a 3-year process for them to do that reassessment. A 1% increase in assessed value would generate, again, nearly $400,000 of additional revenue before we even consider any millage increase. I like to show this every year, and it looks kind of confusing, but if you bear with me, the blue line with the yellow keystones is the Pennsylvania Act 1 index, and this goes back to 2006-07. The maroon line with the MC logo is what our board increased millage by, And you can see in there 3 times since the Act 1 index was passed, this board went 0%. And in 2000, so just a couple years apart in 17, 18, and 2021. The last 2 years, we've come under the index. And you can see the line there of the index is projected out to 28, 29. It's projected to come back down to levels we've seen back in 2017, 18. The green line that kind of intersects the two of them is the increase in assessed value. So what this shows is the Act 1 index, how we taxed and how that relates to our assessed value. And you can see assessed value comes down, our tax rate tends to push up a little bit because we're not getting that bump from the assessed value. I did put a line in here at the end of for boroughs and the county for January 1, 2027. And then for school districts, July 2027 into 28, the countywide reassessment will hit. And that's a whole different thing. It messes up all the slides because what we end up having to do is they come out and reassess and we have to adjust our millage rate so that we don't net any revenue from the reassessment. So we have a couple of years before we have to worry about that. And then this is kind of building on what Carl Hogan put out earlier tonight, just because of the relationship between the food service and the self-insurance being kind of subsidized by the general fund. I wanted to put this slide up, and it basically shows the results in 23-24 of the general fund results. There you can see the surplus deficit. We had a surplus of just under $1 million. Food service, you can see we had a loss due to inflation and increasing food prices and labor costs. And then self-insurance, we had a loss in there, just $422,000. And then those losses contribute to what we call a due to the general fund. And so what that's basically saying is those funds owe the general fund money. And so the way we rectify that is by transferring funds to those funds to be able to level out. So basically, we transfer the money there, and then the money comes back in as satisfying the inner fund loan, kind of between the two. And I point that out because that hasn't always been a massive part of the budget, but in the recent years, as Carl was pointing out, a lot of districts are taking sharp increases in food service self-insurance. That has now become more of an issue for us, so that we have to consider those operations together, since the general fund is responsible for subsidizing those funds. Later tonight on the agenda, there's an item in general action asking for a transfer. A portion of that is for the athletic project to pay for that. And then the other portion is about $1.5 million to allocate to food service and self-insurance to begin to rectify these losses that are here. So that's about it. My recommendation is to stay within the index this year. I will generate the revenue, or I'll generate the budget initially at with no increase to the millage, so we can see where we're at, and then we can decide where we go from there. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
So part B is just the distribution of district policies 202, 308, 607, 805.2, 805.3, 805.4 for first read. And that concludes my report.
Assistant Superintendent report.
So just a kind of preliminary reminder that January is when we start to look at the school calendar for the following year. So our priorities are going to be still trying to have that farm show time that we have in the past that's been accepted by community. Also really looking at our PD time. It always seems like there's never enough time for us to be able to work with our teachers. So seeing if there's anything creative we can do with that. And then just sort of maintaining that same structure we've had to the year in terms of start time and end time, trying to keep that start time not too early in the summer and trying to keep that end time still reasonable in June, which is what we've been doing together for the past. So I anticipate I'll have a draft to show you in January for feedback. At that time, you could either vote on that draft and say it looks good to go, or give me some feedback and we could get that done in February. I'll be involving the association and the administrative teams and layers of feedback before it even comes to you. So if there's anything that you have questions with before the first draft comes out, just, get it to me. Otherwise, I'd prefer to have a January approval, but February is also fine. Any questions on calendar?
Kids are looking forward to the long break.
Yes.
Yeah.
It falls nicely this year.
Yeah, when it falls.
Hate Wednesday Christmases and schools, it works out for the kids to have a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good for me at work, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Dr. Creighton?
Yes, I want to thank the operations team and Brian for preparing the financial statements for this month. Our first order of business is to approve 9A, B, C, D, E. So I've reviewed these documents. I spoke with Brian this morning, and they are in order and as per the best practices of the district. So my recommendation is to approve those. But is there a motion? Go ahead.
I'll make a motion, Dr. Creighton.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Passes. We'll move on to the board. You have anything else?
Yeah, it was just if Brian had additional comments he wanted to make. I'm not clear how we left that, but Brian, did you want to make any additional points tonight?
Sure. Just wanted to point out that if you look at the final page and you look at where we're at percentage-wise to the budget, looking back over a 3-year period of our numbers, we're right there with revenue and expenditures as compared to what percentage we had through November. Like for expenditures, last year we were 31.87% of our expenditures were exhausted through the end of November, and we're at 31.83% of budgeted expenditures. So we're tracking at budget right now with our expenditures. So just wanted to point that out. And revenues also tracking very closely to prior years.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. That concludes my report.
Okay, we'll move on to the board committee reports. Mr. Linder.
One thing that I have is our next meeting will be held January 13th at 4:45. That's it.
Academic committee report.
I have nothing to report. Our next meeting will be the same date. We will be following the business ops meeting at 5:30.
Sounds good. Sentencing activities committee.
Activities committee meeting will be at 4:00.
Sounds good. Anything else for that? Everybody good? All right, we'll move on to the general action items. I'm gonna take A and B, approval to transfer 8.5 million of fund balance to $8,500,000 of fund balance to general fund to the below funded list, and the approval of the accelerated budget opt-out resolutions to stay within the tax rate index of 4.0 for the 2025 and 2026 school year.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. And then I'm gonna take C through T.
So moved.
Any questions? I have a first and a second. Any questions, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? None. Everything passes. Well, we have. All right, on to the board reports. Lancaster 11 and IU 13, Ms. Fucci.
Yes, we had our last meeting, past Wednesday, that's December 11th, and our next meeting will be held on January 15th.
Great, thank you. Mr. Gerhart, CTC.
Yeah, you gave me a lot of time tonight.
Yeah,
That's good.
Take your time.
Yeah, good, thank you. A couple of things to report about the CTC, or the AOC. They're hiring a new director. We're in the midst of hiring that new director now, and it's gone kind of rough. But they brought an interim guy in for a little bit, Mike Catch. Know him, I know the guy. And I was the only one that didn't approve him. I like the guy, but it's was it $780 or something a day or something? It's crazy. When we have people there that could handle it. So that was that. But we're working through it. Not done yet. Hey, there's 2 students of the month. Am I allowed to tell them, the CTC? Yeah, we had, and actually the first one goes to was at Brownstown. It was Haley Hershey. And I had her up here last month or month before, I forget. But here she made student of the month with photography. So she was a student of the month out of Brownstown. She's here. And the crazy thing is, I'm walking around my neighborhood and the guy comes out and we were talking, my wife and I were talking to him a little bit and he mentioned CTC, which lit me up. And here, that's where she lives. She's like a few houses up from me. And anyway, she's actually going to Hershey to do some work up there. So very nice girl. And the second from Manheim Central was Kaylee Doherty. Does anybody know her? She's one I'm having a hard time tracking her down. But she was student of the month and she's over at Mount Joy and I'll get her next time. I'll make sure you get that because she's into the forensics and all this stuff. And she's doing a great job and I can't wait to talk to her. She's in advanced healthcare and be really anxious to give her, profile next time if I get her. So that was the 2 students. That's really nice. When you were there and you're at the board meeting, two of the students of the month are right, right from our school. Makes me happy. Should you too. Okay, now we'll go on to the ones I do have. This is some more from Mount Joy. We have a lot of students over there. So we're going to start with the intro to transportation. And the first gentleman's Mason Cancel. And his plans are, I always ask him their plans. He's really into cars, the way he thinks so. He's into transportation and working on engines. And they donated an old Plymouth that he's been working on there. And next year, he wants to go down to Willow Street. They have a little more advanced auto tech down there. He'll be going down to Willow Street, and then he wants to do a co-op. His grandfather worked at Peterbilt, the trucks. So he works there. So he's been there a few times. So he's very much into it. Hobbies, of course, are cars, car shows, and friends. And there's a picture of the auto body shop there. And it's really neat because all those cars, almost all of them are donated in there. So they can work on them. It's really nice of the dealerships that put the cars in there and they go after them. And now we're going to go into intro to construction. And our first one's Noah Riviere. He's a junior also, but next year, now he's having a good time there and learning, but he's kind of found out what he'd like to do. Next year, he wants to go to Brownstown, which is very big into the HVAC. We'll be doing a full day and he wants to co-op out of there and he enjoys fishing. Mason Hollinger, he's 11th grade also, and he's doing very well there. They only have a half day when they're in 11th grade, so they don't get a lot of time, but it sparks their interest to see what they want to do next year, if they want to stay the same place or go somewhere else. And he wants to go also to Brownstown, and he's going to do electrical engineering or electrical construction. There's a lot of that goes on. So then he's anxious to do the co-op. And his hobbies are basketball. He likes hunting close to the Brownstown place. And he shot 11-point buck. So he's doing good. I was really proud of him. And Meredith Grissinger, she's in 11th. She's the intro in there too to construction. She's saying she wants to enter into the workforce. And she can't wait for next year to go the full day, to go full day in the construction. So she does that. Her hobbies right here at Manheim Central: softball, basketball, and bowling. If anybody knows these people, let me know, okay? I don't know. I always, they're gone. When I talk to them, they're not here too much because they're over at the CTC. So it's like a whole different school to me. So, okay, Matthew Reel. He's in the intro to construction. Also, there's a lot of kids in there. And he's going to go, he's at Mount Joy, but he wants to go next year. He's found out that he kind of likes to do this electrical work also. So he's going to go to Brownstown next year and can't wait to do the co-op. I mean, almost all these, you don't have, I don't know what the percentage is, Ryan, but it's got to be like 95% all get jobs out of there. They do well.
Local people are hiring them.
Oh, yeah, they hire them before they're done. And yeah, his hobbies are, he just loves the outdoor. And I remember this guy. He was very interesting. He's training for a 100-mile bike trip in Maine. And it's a group called Trail Life. It's a Christian group. There's about 7 to 10 of them. I don't know if anybody heard of that. I never did, but it sounds interesting. They get kids that like to bike and they go over. So it's a nice group. So that's Matt. And there's intro, they're doing little projects in there. I'm not sure what that's a mini house. They ran out of room to build a full house, so they built a mini house. Like they build it all the same, but it's smaller. Less lumber. And intro to manufacturing. And that's Gabe Barber, and he's 11th grade, and he's intro to manufacturing. And next year, he wants to go into precision manufacturing, do a co-op. His hobbies are car and working on them, and he likes biking also. Jaden, he's doing good there, but he wants to do precision machining also. And he made a toolbox. They kind of got covered up there. They made a toolbox. He's actually holding it when we got the picture, but he's just really good. His hobbies are video games, basketball, and outdoors. And that's Mr. What's his name? Stevens. Yeah, he's there at in the welding shop and all the welding they do. Okay. And Gavin Ober, he's interesting, very interesting. All more. He's actually co-oping right now. He's in welding. He likes TIG welding and stainless. And he co-ops with SWF Industrial. They're a metal fabrication company. Always look them up where they're at. They're out of Wrightsville. I don't know if anybody heard of them, but they're out of Wrightsville. And his grandfather works at Griner. Heard of that Griner industry? He's worked there. And he loves, his hobbies are hunting and fishing. And he likes to go up near Lewistown, PA. And there's some of the welding machines, and they're overloaded, and they're trying to, get, the welding is real big for some, really big. They're on a wait list all the time. Okay. And carpentry technology. Okay, it's Matthew Leon. And he's a senior also. He's actually, these guys are all working. They're just, it's not that far into the year, and he's co-oping with, you've probably seen the company ECI, but it's in small letters, ECI. You see it around all over. They do a lot of, they're big, he's working at Dillsburg, actually. So he has a little travel. And what he really likes is he likes the prevailing wage. He gets prevailing wage. It's like $30-some an hour. So he's a happy guy. And he's been there, I guess that was 3 weeks when I took it, but he's been there a month already working for there. So he's lined up. His hobbies are working. I like that. He likes working. Family time together, video games, and he loves creative drawing, and he does projects with architecture and doing some house models. So he's a really sharp kid. That's good. And then electromechanical engineering, got Braden, and Braden's in 12th also. He's he's on a co-op. He's working at Tommy's Express Car Wash down in Ephrata. And his plans, he wants, he loves work. He just does that for the money. And he wants to go to College Penn Tech in Williamsport. So, or look at some job fairs also. And his hobbies are bowling team, playing airsoft gun with his dad, video games, and he likes fishing for bass in the Swatara. And that ends it up. But I have more over there, which I'll get next time. I gotta get around them all.
Thank you, Chip.
Yeah, it's interesting. I enjoy it.
And that's it. You're all set? Okay, informational items. The next regular school board. Meeting. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. I don't have that much this time either. Two things caught my eye in all the emails that we get. One was that the US Education Department is calling on every state, school, and district to adopt a policy on cell phone use in schools. Apparently 8 states have now actually set a policy regarding that and regarding the use of cell phones or the prohibition of the use of cell phones in schools, which made me wonder what's ours. And I tried to find it, and Dr. Flannery was nice enough to point out that our policy is number 237, if you want to brush up on that. So we actually do have our ahead of the curve. We have a policy that I think is a good one. It restricts use just so that we can maximize teaching time and that the kids can really just focus on what they're here to do. And so I was glad to see that we have already instituted that. Another thing that caught my eye is the state is always trying to find ways to get people to consider being teachers because we have a shortage of teachers right now. And so the Pennsylvania Department of Education has changed how they do intern certificates. And so now they are saying that people can get free certificates. I think they had to pay $200 or $250 before to do that. And they also say that they can enter the classrooms and teach for up to 3 years while they're taking their educational classes, so that they can get their full teaching certification. This just gives them a couple other ways to have a teaching career. And it was interesting. You do have to have a bachelor's degree in something. So it's not like anybody can just say, hey, I want to go and be a teacher. So you do have to have a bachelor's degree, but it just allows them to use the education that they already have and the skills that they already have and translate them into the classroom and hopefully encourage more people to be teachers in Pennsylvania. Just another thing to keep our eyes on is we are going to have a new PA education secretary. Our last one stepped down, so I think we have an interim right now, but a new one will be appointed or elected soon. Appointed. And also, we're going to have a new federal secretary of education. So we'll see what all of that has in store for us.
Well, one thing I want to say is the cell phones you brought up, like, I always look at that too, when I go in the classrooms at the different CTCs and you open the door and you look on the back of the door and there they have a big holster like with all, where they put all their phones when they come in. So that's what they do over there. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
They're doing a complete ban on cell phones. Really got to come from the parents. Because if we try to do a complete ban, it's got to be from them. But yeah, it's definitely distracting. And I guess Mike's not with us.
Yeah, I can just give a quick report. We had our first full meeting on December 4th. I was in my new position there as superintendent director. Meeting went well. We're doing some upgrading of courses and curriculum to try to draw even more school districts to the programming. So we're going in a good direction there.
Very good. Thank you very much. So inform items, the next regular scheduled board meeting will be held on January 27, 2025 at 6 p.m. at the Manheim Central District Office. Now I open it up to board comments. Anything? Anybody?
Just wish everybody Merry Christmas. Yeah, I've been there.
Merry Christmas, agreed.
The winter concert was awesome.
Yeah.
Impressed with that.
I didn't get to see it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion has second, all in favor, say aye. Good.
Thanks, everybody.
I know.
Just. Not really, it's just like. There's a lot. Like just a lot of stuff to do between now and then. With a lot to say. About your birthday.
So I booked my trip. I'm gonna leave on the 30th.
Where are you going?
You have time.
Where is it?
It's up in up to Honduras.
Wow.
Hey, open the door. Turn off the lights.
I ripped my clothes out, off my.
His birthday is February 1st.
They're so fast,
I'm not.
just ready to. grab
So-
the lady.
Oh, January 30th.
Yeah.
Okay, no, December 30th.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought you were going after.
no, going.
Oh, Merry
Yes.
Christmas. Hope you enjoy your time with your family.
Yeah, for sure. We all, with kids, it's exciting.
Oh, I know. So.
Thank you.
I was like, yeah. Anyways, just like, no.
We're gonna go to Florida. When's our birthday?
Let me give you, can you write down the email?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. I wasn't sure how to do that, and so it's not great.
I was thinking of.
I mean, that time would be nice for last week. Okay, we're done.
Yeah. 24th. Chaotic.
You listen to what.
Yeah.
Joanna Thompson.
Okay, so we're, yeah.
That's what I.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. She's great. She's really nice. She'll help you explain everything.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You're always.
Oh, come on. Budget's not?
She's the one that actually is the
What you got?
Okay, so
She's from.
Have a great one.
Sit on there.
And then all the nurses there.
That's Christmas.
I know that month, gosh, yeah, I don't know the other month, but she messaged me like the past week. I wouldn't have messaged her tonight.
I mean, that was something.
Want the best for your family. You guys don't feel that? I know you feel like you want to come to the board.
Oh, is that what it?
Oh, that's what her comment was tonight.
Oh.
He said if you're voting against this, because maybe you guys aren't fit to be on the board.
It's linked. It's public.
You guys don't want to comment here?
His presentation.
Yeah, this is.
It's linked. Yep, already in public info. Yep. I got ahead of it. Got ahead of it this time. Hey, have a nice holiday.
Merry
Christmas if I don't see you.
Was it?
Merry Christmas.
Ask him.
I didn't know if we brought that out of,
So was that?
No.
I didn't think so.
Oh,
They're
was it?
smart.
I didn't think so either.
Okay, good.
I don't know.
She's
I didn't think so either. I didn't think so either. I'm like, it is.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, yeah, that's good. Yeah, Joe Ryan.
I had this.
Did you really?
My guess is that.
He looks young.
That's what-
He looks different.